Are you afraid of strangers? Well, you should be. I'll tell you my story. For a point of reference, I'm a petite girl, and at the time of this story, I was 22 and a recent grad from Penn State. I was fortunate to get hired by Comcast, a national company headquartered in Philadelphia. I loved Philadelphia and now could live there. It's a great company with lots of potential growth for a young executive, but they start junior executives with low salaries and expect you to learn and grow. The problem was that Philadelphia was an expensive city to find an apartment, but I desperately wanted to be in a Fortune 500 company in Philadelphia. Everything would be fabulous in time, but initially, I needed more cash to support myself. I'd seen on YouTube hacks for making tons of money in your spare time that required little money up front and huge payouts with minimal work. One of those hacks was called product retail arbitrage. So I purchased a short course by some guru that cost $35 and did some research. It was easy and allowed me to invest and sell products at my own level of comfort. The process is simple. Search retailers for discounted products and turn around and sell them at original retail on Craigslist. For example, find a product at Big Lots for $50 and sell it on Craigslist for full retail, about $100.50 if it was 60% off. Easy peasy, rinse and repeat. Making an extra $100 a week was my plan. It would get me through my first year at Comcast and let me enjoy Philadelphia. On my first weekend in Philadelphia, I went to Big Lots. 2 are in the Philly area, so I should easily find something. And I did. It was a TV stand I purchased for $59.99. It had an original retail of $149. It was big, but they delivered it to my apartment the same day. That night, I listed it on Craigslist, saying new, never used. I explained that my parents gave it as a gift for my new apartment, but I didn't need it. I would let it go for $125. I got a response within the hour. We set a time Sunday morning, and the guy came in a pickup truck with a friend, and we made the deal. I pocketed $65. I returned to Big Lots the same afternoon and found a gaming desk. It was $74.99 with original retail of $224. The store delivered it to my apartment the next day. I could make $150 on this if I sell it at original retail. And that is what I listed on Craigslist. I got several offers the following 2 days, but all were lowballed, so I let them pass. Then on Friday night, I got a message from a guy willing to pay me $200. I told him it was absolutely new and never used in the box. It was a gift from a past boyfriend, and I didn't want to keep it around. We scheduled a meeting for Saturday evening at 8 o'clock. Anyway, 8 o'clock rolls around, and a few minutes after, there's a knock at the door. I open it to a man maybe late 40s. He had sleeves of tattoos on both arms that went up to his neck. He was wearing a black leather vest with a biker club on the back that I don't remember. In a deep smoker's raspy voice, he says, "Hey, I'm here for the gaming desk." I gave him a big smile and said, "Welcome, please come in. It's hot outside. Can I get you a glass of lemonade? The desk is in the living room. Go take a look as I get you something to cool off." He carefully inspected the desk and said, "I'll give you $100 for it. It's last year's model, not the newest rig." He then stared at me very intimidatingly, and I felt I had no choice. His gaze was so dead with no life. His eyes ate right into me to the point I was petrified. I just shook my head yes and made the deal. Standing in his shadow, I was so small next to him, and he was so close to me that I could smell his body odor. He gives me a crumpled handful of bills and says it's all there. I didn't count it. I didn't argue or say a word. He picked up the gaming table quickly and walked out the door. Something was very negative about that man. He gave off a scary vibe, and I was happy he was gone, even if I only made a few dollars on the sale. I watched TV for a couple of hours and prepared for bed. As I prepared, my cell phone buzzed. I picked it up without looking, thinking it was my mother, as she always calls about this time. But it was that deep smoker's raspy voice. I froze. What he said will forever be etched into my brain. "I'm calling to thank you for your kindness and hospitality. I'm seldom greeted with a smile. I was planning on raping you, killing you, and stealing whatever money you had. I had my hand on my knife when you accepted my money. You would have been the best that I have done. But I changed my mind because you were kind to me. Take care." I sat shell-shocked on my bed. My mind recounted the moments with him, and I knew what he said was true. I felt death in his eyes. I was seconds away from terrible things and death. I wish I had recorded the call for the police, but I didn't. The police checked the number and said it was a burner phone and there was no way to trace him. And he never touched me in any way. The only thing with fingerprints on it he took with him was the gaming desk. I've yet to list any more products for retail arbitrage on Craigslist. Be careful if you bring a stranger into your home selling or when buying from Craigslist. At least one evil man is searching Craigslist for his sick pleasure. As a college student at Cornell in Ithaca, I needed a newer car so badly. Mine was on its last legs. I worked part-time as a pizza delivery, so a good car was essential to making money. I went to Craigslist to find a vehicle that could work well as a delivery car, not too hard on the gas and is in decent mechanical shape. It wasn't the first time I had purchased a car off Craigslist. My last car I bought there as well, and it lasted 3 years. Right away, a Honda Civic caught my eye. It was a low miler for its years, and its condition looked good for 2009. They were asking $5,000, which isn't a steal, but still a reasonable price. And that is all I had anyway. So I contacted the seller and he responded quickly, introducing himself as Eddie. He said he was moving to New York City and wouldn't need a car, so he was anxious to sell it. He said it drove well and hadn't had any trouble since owning it. He was the second owner. He said if I wanted to test drive it, we could meet, but because he didn't know me, he would not take a check, only cash if we made a deal. I said that was okay, but I was a little bothered by having to go to the bank and withdraw $5,000 in cash and carry around that amount of money. It was all I had, so I was concerned. But he sounded like a nice, honest guy and assured me I'd be safe and that I would love the car. I really wanted that car, so I got the money, put it in an envelope, slipped it into my back pocket, and headed to the meeting point, which was not far from my apartment and an easy walk. When I arrived at the parking lot, it was deserted except for the Honda. I was a little surprised that it hadn't been washed or anything. Usually a guy washes his car when presenting it for sale, trying to get top dollar. This guy didn't seem to care. I walked up to the car and Eddie rolled down the window and said, "Hey, you the guy who wants the car?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." Eddie was friendly and hopped out of the car and said, "Let me show you your new car. She's a beauty, isn't she?" He popped the hood and showed the engine. He said he had recently changed the oil, so it would be suitable for 7,000 miles. He was knowledgeable and made me feel comfortable in making this purchase. He asked if I wanted to take her for a spin, and I said yes, I would. He asked if I had the money, and I tapped my back pocket saying ready to deal. As we walked around the car, he clicked the key, and the back trunk lid came up, and Eddie said, "Take a look inside there. See how much room there is." I bent in to inspect and lights shot through my head, and the next thing I remember was waking in the back of the Honda. I found my cell phone and called the police. My money was stolen from my back pocket, and the police informed me that the Honda had been reported stolen several days earlier. I described the man, Eddie, and gave them the phone number I had used to contact him from Craigslist, but the phone was a burner phone, so there was no way to trace it back to Eddie. The police did post the description and found fingerprints helpful in connecting Eddie with a string of similar muggings across the state. 2 other victims were not as fortunate as me and still suffer from the concussion they received. They knew the assailant by different names, but everything else was the same in the MO. He was kind, smiling, and defused any concerns until he knew we had the money and where it was. Then he attacked from behind with what the police think was a monkey wrench by the wounds we each received. As far as I know, he has never been apprehended. So if you ever go to look at a car on Craigslist, never go alone, and a check is safer for your money. This is an authentic and traumatizing story for me to tell. I have used Craigslist and many of my friends without any incident. I just wish I had been warned about the dangers of Craigslist and taken more precautions. I tell this story now so you may not be harmed like I was. I was a young girl of 16 when this crippling incident took place. I'll never be emotionally the same as I was before this day. I live in Cambridge, a small rural Midwestern town you probably have never heard of. I live just a little way out from the center in an original farmhouse in the area. It's not a farm anymore, but there are farms all around. I've lived here my entire life, and that partly led to my innocence and trust in people. There is a minor crime beyond the occasional bar brawl. Mostly young guys with too little to do and drinking too much. They aren't really bad guys, just bored. Cambridge is mostly a quiet town. So it's surprising that the most horrifying event ever happened to me in this farm town. It was summer and I was working at the hardware store owned by my uncle. I started working summers there when I was 14. I always bike to and from work daily unless my mom or dad is home. They work an hour away from Cambridge, so they are home infrequently, so I ride. Well, one day I finished work and went to where I left my bike and it was gone. Again, it's Cambridge. No one locks their bike, heck, no one locks their car, and hardly anyone locks their house. But someone did steal my bike. It was a several-year-old Kmart bike, so it really had no value, so I didn't bother to report the theft. I was pissed, mind me, and I did need a bike to get to work and home. I called my dad, who came and picked me up on his way home. That night, I got on my computer and began searching Craigslist for a used bike. I wanted a good one this time that would be faster and have at least 10 gears, as I had a small hill on the ride home, and a few gears would help a lot. I had saved some money that I could take from. Within a half hour, I had found a listing for a 10-speed that was the right height for my petite body. I'm only 4'11" and 92 pounds. Kid size, I know. This fit the bill at only $75. It was a real bargain, probably because they thought only a little kid would buy it. It was in beautiful shape, looking absolutely new. Both my parents were gone to work, so I ordered an Uber to take me and drop me off near where the seller said he would be. The seller was 12 miles away in a neighboring city. A long bike ride home, but it would be totally worth it. Uber got me to the meeting location at Walmart, and I got out and saw a gray work van across the parking lot. The lot was mostly empty, and the van was parked away from the building under some trees. The van driver saw me and waved, calling, "Are you the girl looking for the bike?" I waved back and walked over to the van. The driver got out. He was 6 foot and maybe 250 pounds. He wore a Beer Tavern's t-shirt that rose over his belly. His arms had several tattoos of snakes and skulls and broken hearts. He looked like a regular working guy in droopy work jeans, probably a plumber. When I got next to the van, he spat out chewing tobacco and offered me his dirty hand. Super gross, but it's not uncommon in the rural Midwest. I reluctantly took his hand and let him shake my entire arm while saying, "Now you're a real cutie." "How old are you?" I said 16. And he said, "Why, that is just about prime." He said this in such a scary voice, with his eyes running up and down my body from head to foot, stopping at 2 places in his grazing gaze, and it wasn't my face and feet. He was eyeing me like a slab of meat at the butcher. After an interminable amount of time in his leering eyes and his dirty grasp of his hand, he said,
"The bike is in the back. It's a perfect fit for you. You're going to love riding this horse."
He walks me around to the back of the van, still holding my hand. He was holding it so tightly I could not pull away. He opened the back door and, in a single motion, swung me into the van, saying,
"There she is under that blanket behind the driver's seat. Go help yourself."
He released my hand and I simply backed up further into the dark van. I panicked, as this was not a Craigslist purchase, but something frighteningly malevolent. In a second, he was in the back of the van with the back door slammed closed. There was no bike, and this was not an agreed-upon exchange. I tried to compose myself and think, what should I do? It was my 92 pounds against 250. I scanned the darkened van and saw a work belt. As this ugly man grabbed me, I grabbed the screwdriver from the belt and swung it upward. It struck him in the eye, and he fell backward. I stepped on his fat belly and flew light as a hummingbird over him, unlocking the back door and flying free. I ran to Walmart crying and screaming for help. Security came to the door, and I pointed to the van, saying I had been attacked. The van drove off, disappearing around a corner. I don't know how. I had left the screwdriver in his eye. Security called the police, and I explained the entire story. When they investigated the next day, the bike ad had been removed. The phone number was a burner phone, and the license plate captured by Walmart cameras was stolen, not belonging to that van at all. The man wasn't captured. My warning to young girls using Craigslist is to be very, very careful, or this chilling nightmare may become your worst nightmare. To everyone near Cambridge, beware of a man with one eye.